Welcome back. Rosemary Jenks is the Director of Government Relations at Marvelous Organization, a truly indispensable outfit. It's called Numbers USA. She is a lawyer by training, one of the preeminent thinkers and really practitioners in the whole battle space of the war for the free world that involves immigration policy, and one of our go-to folks on that subject. Rosemary, it's always good to have you with us. Welcome back.
Thank you, Frank. It's great to be with you.
Maybe we could start with kind of a macro picture at the moment. I've been reading Ann Coulter's book on Adios America, talking about the immigration crisis that is upon us. Again, you're at the forefront of this fight. How would you characterize the kinds of policies that we're pursuing now, both with respect to legal and illegal immigration into the United States?
Well, Frank, you're right. This is a huge issue because essentially we have no policy. Our policy is open borders, open doors. So we are not choosing who we allow to come into the United States as an immigrant. We are letting them self-select and either come illegally or come through a massively overgrown legal system without regard to the impact on America, on American voters, on American workers.
Now, Rosemary, let me just ask you, what you've just described, of course, is not what is actually the law of the land. This is simply a question of how it is being enforced or actually not enforced pursuant to direction from the president, I guess. Is that right?
Well, it's a little bit of both, Frank, because the legal immigration system is actually, the massive growth in legal immigration from a tradition of about 250,000 a year to the current 1.2, 1.3 million per year, that's under the law. The law was designed by folks like Ted Kennedy to expand automatically without congressional interference. So that is the law. On illegal immigration, of course, we have an administration that, let's be real here, has followed at least 3 other administrations that don't care about the enforcement of our immigration laws. So they're not following the laws against illegal immigration. They're certainly not following the laws against criminal aliens. And so all of this combined is simply overwhelming.
Yeah. Speaking of criminal illegal aliens, there is, of course, a lot of focus on that at the moment. Notably, Donald Trump has weighed in as part of his presidential campaign, decrying primarily, I guess, Mexicans coming across the border with malign intent. There's also been this horrific incident in San Francisco involving a repeat offender who kept getting back into this country. How serious is this piece of the overall problem, and what is being done to remedy it, Rosemary Jenks?
Well, it's a hugely serious problem because any crime that is committed by any immigrant, legal or illegal, is a preventable crime. So, first of all, illegal immigrants should not be here at all. And if we had a secure border, if we had an E-Verify system, if we had state and local law enforcement cooperation, if we had a visa tracking system, they wouldn't be here. And so none of those crimes would be committed. With legal immigration, you have permission to come here and obey our laws. So if you come here and you don't obey our laws, then we have the right to deport you. That, of course, is not happening under this administration. But anyone, any foreign citizen who commits a crime should be subject to deportation. We don't need to import criminals in this country. And every American victim of one of these crimes should be, well, their family members in a lot of these cases, unfortunately, should be standing up and screaming about the injustice of this because, the idea that someone can cross our border 5 times, 6 times, 7 times illegally and continue to commit crimes and be convicted of felonies each time and then just come back in is absurd.
Yeah. It's not only absurd, obviously, it's a public safety menace. Rosemary, give us a sense of the magnitude of this problem. I was listening to Bill Bennett's program earlier in the day, and he threw out a number, and I don't have any idea whether it's right or not, but it's staggering, if true. Something like 347,000 people who are in this country illegally and are folks with a record of felonies. Is that possibly correct?
That I believe that number comes from the federal prison system, and it is a number of non-citizens in federal prisons at one point in time when the GAO did a study. There are a whole lot of numbers that you can throw out here. I mean, this administration in just the last 2 years has released 70,000 convicted criminal aliens into our communities rather than deporting them.
Unbelievable.
There are 900 and some thousand illegal aliens who have been ordered removed from the United States by a judge, but are still here.
And you mentioned something about state and local government involvement. Rosemary, there is this bizarre phenomenon of these sanctuary cities. Describe what they are, how on earth they can possibly be allowed to operate, and the effects of such cities or communities on the overall problem you're describing.
Well, sanctuary cities are places where the local government, or in some cases the state government, has actually adopted a law or a regulation that prohibits state or local officials from contacting federal immigration authorities to determine the immigration status of someone they are holding in their custody. So a suspected criminal, a charged criminal, or a convicted criminal. That's what we're talking about. These policies have been in violation of federal law since 1996. Congress actually passed a law in 1996 that prohibits sanctuary policies across the board. And yet the administration doesn't care to enforce that law. Now, when a state like Arizona passes a law to help enforce immigration laws, this Justice Department sues Arizona to prevent them from doing that. When San Francisco adopts a sanctuary policy, this administration says, oh, that's fine. We're not going to worry about that. That's their choice.
And as I understand it, the individual who was responsible for this recent murder in San Francisco was essentially a beneficiary of this kind of sanctuary city protection that kept agencies of the government from being able to prevent that individual from getting back on the street. Is that right?
Absolutely. And he actually said in an interview after his arrest that he came to San Francisco because it's a sanctuary city. He knew that he would not be, turned over to immigration officials if he were caught committing crimes in San Francisco. And he was absolutely right. And he gunned down an innocent woman.
Murderously. Rosemary Jenks again is our guest. She is the Government Relations Director of Numbers USA. Rosemary, finally, in the last minute or so, talk about the prospect that still more of these so-called unaccompanied minors may be coming across the border. At least the government anticipates this year we'll see a new surge. Is that now taking place, as best you can tell?
It absolutely is taking place, and it has been taking place all along. We just haven't been, the media hasn't been covering it, but the surge never ended. I mean, there was a big bump last summer, and then it slowed down a little bit, generally due to weather, because illegal immigration pretty much always slows down in late August when the desert is so hot. But it has been continuing all the way along, and it is growing again for the summer, and it's expected to be the second highest number after last year. So this is an ongoing problem, and of course that's to be expected because this administration, despite all the tough talk they did last summer, they're not actually removing any of the people who come.
And this is something I know Senator Ted Cruz has weighed in on with the Department of Health and Human Services, and we'll be following closely, as I know will you at Numbers USA, his efforts to try to help curb this yet another infusion of aliens into our country, at least some of whom we have reason to believe aren't children. They're gang members. Rosemary Jenks, I salute you again for the great work that you personally do and your outfit, Numbers USA, is doing on all of these fronts. I hate to think where we would be without the efforts that you make and your millions of members to try to have the laws enforced, to try to have sensible immigration policies adopted. Keep up that good work and come back to us again very soon. Next up, retired military intelligence officer Steve Coughlin talks about his new book, Catastrophic Failure, and how it's in evidence in President Obama's view that he can defeat the Islamic State with better ideas. That and more straight ahead.